Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? Let's talk about All Things Huge and Hideous by G. Scott Huggins. Many moons ago, 2008 now that I think about it, before I had picked up the first Mistborn novel by Sanderson, I remember hearing him talk about this at some writing conferences and on his podcast about the idea of taking a commonly established trope and then asking what if, and then using that to spin a whole story out of it. His idea was, what if you had a prophesied hero, like there are many times in epic fantasy, who was supposed to rise up and smite the overly powerful Dark Lord and restore balance to the universe and whatever. And he stands up and he's like, "Oh, I'm the prophesied hero, I'm gonna fight you," and the Dark Lord just pimp slaps him, and that's the end of the story. Obviously that wasn't the end of the Mistborn story, but he used that as the seed to build the main arc of one of the characters and go from there, and he spun an incredible series out of it. I think G. Scott Huggins is going in that same direction with this book, only he's taking a different trope and flipping it on its head, where the Dark Lord, the quote-unquote Sauron character, not saying that the Dark Lord in this is a Sauron character, but the big bad villain dude takes over a medieval-themed fantasy kingdom. He wins, the good guys are all dead, and there are ground-level blue-collar worker types that are left to pick up the pieces and make what they can of their life in the wake of this evil victory. And that's where we're introduced to his main character in this story, James D. Grand, who is a veterinarian in this fantasy setting. And he's just doing what he can to stay off the radar, make a living, and hopefully not die under this new regime. This is a book that almost reads like an anthology of ideas. There is kind of a through line to each individual case that the doctor has to take, but for the first several of them, each chapter is an individual case that he has to deal with. He's got to resurrect the Dark Lord's dragon. He's got to handle sick pets that belong to the elite now, and there's one of these effete socialites who says that her pet dog identifies as being a vampire or something, and he's like, well, your dog's malnourished because you can't just feed your dog blood. The dog needs food and nutrients and stuff. It's kind of funny because there was this series of tweets or something that went viral recently. I think it was PETA or somebody was trying to get this trend going where people turn their cats into vegans. And the ASPCA had to clap back and say, no, cats are obligate carnivores. They have to eat meat. You can't do this isn't an ideological thing. If you try to feed your cat a vegan diet, it will die. This is animal cruelty. It just weird synchronicity on that one. But he does these funny examinations of these what if type cases, and then they slowly compile until there's an overall arc, and it builds up and it resolves at the end. I don't want to give too much away because, first of all, it's not even that long of a book, and it reads very fast. I remember picking this up because it came highly recommended, flipping through it, and just, man, it didn't take me long to burn through the entire thing. I was like, man, this is really freaking good. It came highly recommended. I mean, the two back cover quotes here are from DJ Butler and Chris Rocchio, and then I think there was a front cover later, recommended by Larry Correia. So it's there's three authors that I like to read, and they're all praising this guy. And so I picked up this book on a chance and just loved it. 4 or 5 stars easily. I will say that, content warning, there's a fair amount of language. He doesn't go over the top with it. He doesn't go overboard with it, but there's all the way up to the F-bomb in it. And I would say that there's one chapter where there's you're not necessarily in scene for it, but there's a fair amount of verbal discussion about it. There's a girl on girl type conclusion to a situation, but there is at least a mechanical reason for it in the story. It's not put there just to be gratuitous. You could tell this is the kind of story constructed by the mind of a gamer, a guy who plays RPGs and says, well, what if I was in this situation and I had this that has this attribute, and I put these things together and I solved a problem in this way. I'm not an RPG guy, but I've hung out with enough of them, and they've told me interesting things that they've done in their campaigns, enough that I've got kind of a baseline familiarity with it to where I see why there are a lot of fantasy writers who are also gamers, because they learn things through the gaming process that make their worlds and their stories more interesting. G. Scott Huggins definitely did that. And after reading this book, I want to get into some of the other ones that he's got. He's got a series out. I don't know if it's only going to be 2, but there are 2 books out in it so far called Responsibility of the Crown that, I mean, based on the cover art alone, is a very unique fantasy world, even though it's, humans and dragons type thing. After reading this one, I trust him to do something unique and entertaining with that kind of setting. So highly recommend All Things Huge and Hideous. I did an upstream review of this one, like maybe 2 years ago at this point, so I'll throw the link down below. But definitely check that one out if you're in the mood for something that is familiar enough to make it accessible and quickly so, but new enough that you won't be bored at all. Like, I mean, I was verbally LOLing within the first couple of pages, so expect to have that kind of experience with it. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.